So in this segment, we're going to be doing like a longer form kind of reaction to a load of Newsnight clips that they've uploaded onto Twitter, and hope the BBC copyright people don't absolutely destroy me here. But some really interesting stuff here and some really horrifying stuff. I know Max reacted to one with a guy talking about, I think it was from this dude here, so when we'll get there when we get there. But you've got this one from Deborah Meaden.
Here knows what the vision is. I don't know what Brexit was all about. Tell me what it's about, and I tell you, I'll get on with it. I'll deliver. Nobody.
Brexit was about, xenophobia. That's what it was really about. The idea that foreigners had taken over the control of the country and we need to take it back, and we've got all these bloody Eastern Europeans here and all this other nonsense, and we can be a great nation again. That's what Brexit was about. So if you can get behind that, then fair. But based on what I've seen from you on Twitter and amongst other things, I don't think that's your kind of show, I'll be honest. So we've got another one. So they ask him, is it possible to estimate the cost of Brexit to this guy's company? And this is really eye-opening stuff here. Really interesting and eye-opening stuff.
Hannah, Managing Director for Robinson Brothers. We develop and manufacture chemicals in the UK, and therefore we import the raw material from the EU and export back to the EU.
And how's Brexit affected your business?
So, when it comes to importing, there are customs checks, things like that. So that comes at a cost. We'll let him go through it, and then I'll kind of go through it as well.
Disastrous, really. I'm just picking up on the points about being competitive. Forgive me for not chuckling about that, because Brexit has made us anything but competitive because of the extra cost that we face just on compliance alone. We've had a series of regulations within the EU and that we complied with. There's one particular group of regulations called the REACH regulations. I won't bore you with them, but they're chemical regulations where, for me to comply, if the UK wants its own version, is going to cost me 1.6 million. That will put me out of business completely.
Sorry, a one-off?
A one-off,
sum of
yes.
1.6 million.
1.6 million. But in the
UK's REACH rival, I guess you could call it, or alternative, has not been set up, and it won't be set up till probably past 2026. I'll be honest, from what I've read.
Meantime,
and that would put you out of business.
That would put us out of business. But in the meantime, right, we registered all our chemicals in the EU under this REACH. Okay, we paid for this data. It's ring-fenced within the EU. We now cannot access that data because it belongs to the EU. Mm-hmm. We have to pay for access, and I have to pay somebody to allow me access to our data because of Brexit.
So can I ask you then, Mr. Hanrahan, is it possible to estimate the yearly extra cost to your business?
£155,000 per year we're paying currently.
Because of Brexit?
Again, it irritates me because, and I listened to the Chancellor the other day saying, we need to be innovative and creative, and £150,000 for me would make me very, very innovative, because that is stopping me being innovative in the company, because I'm just wasting it on duplication and I'm wasting it on compliance. And this compliance does not help you, does not help me, does not help our employees, does not help the environment.
Well, let me ask.
So, when it comes to that kind of stuff here, you're talking about, I think, 150k for R&D he could put that money towards. And when you think about where the money went for, our contribution to the EU's budget, it went to money. Some of the money went towards regulators. It went towards having kind of a singleized, standardized regulatory system, regulatory body, so that you don't have to pay for duplication. That's one of the reasons why Norway pays in so much to the EU budget, is because they have access to different EU regulators. And now that we are out of the EU, what you have is several chemical companies that would have to pay for the data. And I think on top of what he said here, right, on top of what he said about the REACH stuff, because he might mention it in another, in the longer part of the video, which I don't have access to, he's got to pay. When he imports these chemicals, they come with customs fees and other things, right? That comes with transportation costs, additional costs. When he goes to export, he'll face additional costs through customs, through checks and everything else to make sure that the chemicals he's using are up to EU standards. These are additional costs to trade. So it's not just this 150,000 I think he pays to get access to the REACH data. It's also the additional cost of trade that he's facing. And that's a barrier where he's going to struggle to find emerging markets for these sorts of chemicals potentially. But more on top of that is for him to, he imports the raw materials to make the chemicals in the UK. That's all gone up in cost now. So his base costs have gone up, and he can't innovate past that unless somehow he can magic up these raw materials within the UK, which is obviously not possible, because otherwise he would do it. So yeah, you can see the actual cost of Brexit for one of these small companies, or medium companies, and we're going to do more and more kind of looks at some of the impacts on these companies very soon. Depending on how the timelines work out for when this video comes out. You've got a couple more here, which is the Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary talking absolute nonsense.
To say is because whether you voted leave and you want more isolation, whether you voted remain and you want to rejoin, we have the same common cause. We've got to get our country to succeed. We've got to end the row.
But how do we get our country to succeed? If you've got, on the one hand, you've got one person talking about more isolation, you've got, on the other hand, one other person talking about rejoining the EU, for example. Those are two polar opposites. So you can't bring those two people together. It'd be like connecting the north and south, or two north bits of a magnet. They will repulse each other. It doesn't work like that, Chief. You trying to look like you're the adult in the room makes you look like you're the moron in the room. Like, Jesus Christ, man. Grow up. A few more. I should really preload these. The other ones are preloaded, not this one. This is the one Max covered. This one's hilarious. So we'll go through this one as well. I've got a few more.
I obviously voted to leave, and I still believe it was the right decision to make, because I felt it's a generational thing. It's not a decision that was going to form a result within months or weeks or a year or two. It's, 15, 20, maybe more years.
My man, can I get the lottery numbers? Because somehow you knew these benefits wouldn't come for, around potentially 15 years. Versus the Brexiteers are saying we would have sunlit ups and uplands, considerable upsides, no downsides. My man, have you got the lottery numbers? Because somehow you predicted the future. Which generation are going to benefit from this? Because by the time that happens, with all due respect, you look like you're in your potentially, I'm going to be generous and say early 30s, right? You're going to be heading towards retirement before you see any of the Brexit benefits, depending on if the Tories keep changing the retirement age. But my man saw the future. He knew it wasn't going to happen straight away. But in 15 years' time, we'd see the benefits. Yeah, sure, Chief. You voted for something to help you in 15 years. All right, big man. We've got this one. This one's quite fun.
Going so far,
well,
especially when you hear from businesses with the extra costs.
To cut to the point, I think it's not going well. And the reason it's not going well is because there have been tremendous headwinds that government have had, which is COVID and Ukraine crisis, which you've talked about, and including the financial crisis, which has taken their eye off the ball.
Okay.
And may I just finish, Victoria? Sorry. Eye off the ball.
Hold on, what's that?
And including the financial crisis, which is...
What financial crisis? Are you talking about the 2008 financial crisis? What are you talking about?
Taken their eye off the ball.
Okay.
And may I just finish, Victoria? Sorry. The key for the future, whether it be the Conservative government or a Labour government or whatever, is we have got to be competitive as a nation against our competitors, which are Europe and the United States in the Western world. We've got to be 10% more competitive in tax, 10% more competitive in regulation, and we will do extremely well.
How do you measure being 10% more competitive in regulations? That doesn't even make sense. But when it comes to tax, like I think the OECD countries have set a minimum. I think it's around 15% for corporation tax. So you can't really go below that, otherwise you'd be breaking some sort of agreement. So how do you 10% better on tax? Like, just ridiculousness, just clown-like statements. And again, when it comes to regulations, if you want to export your products, like the chemical products. You can't. You're not adhering to UK regulations at that point. You're adhering to EU regulations. So if you want to export any of these products that we will, according to this guy, get so good at because of deregulation, who are you going to trade with? Because other countries are going to say, your standards are a lot lower than ours, so we're going to check all of this stuff, and we're going to see, if this stuff is up to code, and that comes with costs, and they might outright reject it. Potentially, and say it's not, your goods aren't up to our standards, so bye-bye. So all of that innovation you've done has been wasted because you can't trade it with anyone. Like, dude, buzzwords galore over here. My man needs to come up with some better arguments. We've got this one, which is another one, absolutely moronic statement.
When the UK can have basically the power over their own laws, and so that's really important for our country. That we can.
What laws? What do you want to do? What policy specifically do we not have control over, especially now? Which ones? What do you want to do?
Make those decisions, and we can stick by it. without having to have a superior governing body to make decisions for us.
But the power to do what, Chief? That's the problem. The power to do what? You know, when it came to the slavery argument in America, right? You know, I think there were a lot of people who argued, oh, it's nothing to do with slavery, it's to do with states' rights. But like, as people pointed out, especially now in meme form, states' rights to do what? You know, what do you want to do with these powers? And you can say, oh, I just don't want Big Brother watching over us to make sure we can do what we want. It's just nonsensical. Like, the EU set the minimum standards. That's what they set, the minimum standards. Just like you have with a lot of other countries when you do trade deals, there are minimum standards put in place. It's just ridiculous statements. I don't know if she's referring to the ECHR, which we're still part of, but honestly, it's just moronic statements. I don't know, is there one more? Oh, here we go. This one I found very hypocritical. There was one more clip I wanted to discuss where this guy is some sort of financial advisor. I don't have the clip set up, so it doesn't really matter. But this guy, he's a financial advisor, and he said he voted for Brexit, and he immediately regretted his decision, but doesn't elaborate as to why he voted for Brexit. And then he goes on to say he can't advise people in France about their, you know, financial affairs because of Brexit. And I'm like, my man, you shot yourself in the foot big time, didn't you? But this lady, I found her arguments really weird and a bit hypocritical in a sense. Kind of the Rejoiner entitlement was what I was spidey sensing here.
Good evening. I'm Maxine Madison. I'm from Letchworth and I'm a solicitor. In my opinion, not unsurprisingly, Brexit is proving to be an unmitigated disaster.
Why do you say not unsurprisingly, Maxine?
Because I voted to remain, and I always felt that it could never work. To me, it seems that that's coming to fruition in that the trade deals we were promised, they don't seem to be there.
Some sort of background noise, I don't know what that is, but you know, it's right. The trade deals were promised, garbage. The Australia deal, garbage. The New Zealand deal, garbage. You name it, it's garbage.
We've got a huge shortage of workers in industries where we really need people right now. The biggest example, of course, is the NHS. And people who previously had the opportunity to travel, to get work, to live, to retire in 28 different countries, now can no longer do that. They can't stay any more than 90 days in 180.
It felt like she had plans to retire in the EU, and she's talking about like, oh, now without freedom of movement, we have massive staff shortages in the UK, and now we can't also retire in these other countries. It feels a bit entitled rejoinery, I think, in my opinion, because you know she's saying, oh, you know, we can't retire in the countries we want to retire in, and we have massive staff shortages here as well. So I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit mean or being pedantic, I don't know, but it felt a bit, I sensed a bit of entitlement. I don't want to be mean though, because she's not the biggest clown in this circus. It definitely goes to, I'm going to go with this man here, this gentleman here, definitely one of the kings of the circus. This guy, definitely one of the kings. This guy, supreme king of the circus. This is the maybe one of the few people with brains in this audience. But yeah, you know, genuinely, right, I'll watch some of these clips. If you can get access to this episode of Newsnight, probably worth a watch, because you have a range of views here. You know, huge credit to, I think, Victoria Derbyshire. I'd want to see a lot more pushback from her when it comes to some of the answers. Maybe she did more in the longer clips, but you know, the fact that the BBC are doing this, I think, is really good. Asking people, especially in industry, has Brexit benefited you? If not, how so? You know, that sort of stuff. You know, with the chemical guy, the stuff about Reach, I didn't know. You know, I didn't know it's costing him so much money just to get access to the data, and he's got to pay someone else, I'm assuming a third party, to get access. I didn't know that. So, you know, you learn a lot of interesting stuff from these people in industry about how Brexit specifically has impacted them, because this is a unique example. But I guarantee there'd be others. Maybe the pharmaceutical companies would have issues with the, getting access to EU data on medicines, for example. But yeah, this was good, very, very good. And the Newsnight crew, despite the fact that they are facing political interference, I think, from certain people within the BBC, people like Victoria Derbyshire and Ben Chew have done, I think, a very, very good job with a lot of things, especially when it comes to numbers. Ben Chew's very good with the numbers, and Victoria Derbyshire, I think she's pretty good at interviews. Maybe not Emily Matlis's level. Maybe she is. I don't know. I need to watch a lot more of her kind of interviews and other things, which I've watched a few. She does very well. And I think here, this whole setup, I don't know whose idea it was, but, massive credit to them, and I hope they get a pay raise. But anyway, so I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. A bit longer than I wanted to go, but, who cares? And hopefully support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one.